So to start off with, a clip that hopefully is dark or where it would make sense to have lighting or electricity. And then next would be the lighting itself, the overlay, which you're gonna always set to add. Never set it to screen, never anything else. There's like a few times when I would set it to screen, but almost never. So the reason for being add is you'll notice the difference between screen and add. One add, it actually goes with the colors in the background that are with it. So here's it without any of the effects, and then of course ignore it, but essentially screen, it'll be the same, or it'll be better. But as for finding overlays, I recommend YouTube or like stock video websites, and make sure to find something that like actually looks like it matches with your clip. So it's important to consider perspective. So the camera's in the middle looking down, and the clouds are at they're going far in the back. So this somewhat matches it, sorry. But it doesn't have to be perfect when you pick it out, because you can use Bezier warp or any type of warp to further adjust it, and then you see the difference here. It aligns more with the clouds and how it should be, which should be like more pressed into it. Also, I rotated it slight bit, so yeah. Next, this is optional, but before you use deep glow, use levels. This levels isn't optional. Deep glow is, use levels. So without and then with, you're gonna want to darken a little bit, or even if you're like your clip's a little too bright or something like that, then you can increase. But for the most part, you're gonna want to just darken this a little bit to match with how your background is. Never go too dark, but around here should be good enough so it like blends into the clouds a little bit better. And then this is also, it's not optional, but if your lighting's far away, it's definitely necessary. So the reason I blurred this out throughout the whole clip is because since it's in the distance and it's not focused, then the same way the clouds aren't focused is the same way the lighting will not be focused too. So that's why it's like that. But if it's like really close, then of course it will be in focus. But if it feels really close, I recommend adding or using heat waves, or heat wave uni. The heat wave, it's part of universe. It'll add the heat wave effect that you'd get from real life, where like something's really really hot in front of you, in which lightning obviously is really hot. But the optional thing to add is deep glow. And if you do add a deep glow, make sure to set the radius pretty low, 150, because the streaks on the actual lightning are very thin. So match that while having your deep glow, the radius be thin too, so it doesn't diffuse the light on the streaks too much. And then of course blur. So next, exposure. It's gonna be, this is also for realism. So when you have lightning that pops up or that appears, it'll do a slight flicker because your eyes or whatever is viewing it is adjusting to it. So it'll be really bright, and then different streaks will come in, so it'll be like a flicker, and then it'll slowly dim off because the lighting is disappearing. But you can do this with I use exposure, which I would recommend, and how bright or how high you'll set the exposure to will depend on your actual clip. But essentially from 0, and it'll go halfway, and then it'll go a little bit more to kind of transition to the brightness and how bright it will be because of the lightning, and it'll go back off, and then completely on, or very bright because the lighting's actually coming in, and it'll slowly fade off. So just look at the ground right here and you'll see it. Look at the ground, and that's how lighting would work. So next is solid composite. Adjustment layer with solid composite on it. Set the blending mode to hard light and set the color to black. This helps blend the colors together, or not so much colors, but to match the colors and the brightness and contrast of the scene. So it really helps push that the overlay into the actual clouds. Next, this is optional but tint. I like the reason this is optional is because this is for like a visual effect, purely, since I like the way that it goes from undersaturated to saturated to undersaturated, and it slowly fades off like this. That's through the tint. And then, but I won't include this for this tutorial, or as in like recommend or unrecommended. Next is blur. This is I'd highly recommend using blur, because the way, like I said, how focus works is that once the lightning hits, it will unfocus the camera, in which case would cause the camera to refocus or have to refocus. So you're gonna have the blur peak right there. So right here, when it fully appears, my blur goes to 5, but this will depend on your actual, the values will depend on the blur that you're using for actual, blurring your clip. So yeah, and make sure your graphs are fairly slow, because it's not going to be instant, of course. And then last but not least, very important to finally pull everything together, is your color correction, or however you're going to color grade it. But no matter what you're doing, I highly recommend really adding a lot of contrast to further, once again, blend the lightning into the clouds and have everything really be affected properly. But yeah, your color correction itself, just make sure it's fairly dark, or it doesn't have to be too dark. Once again, depends on your actual clip. But yeah, it's very simple, and if you have any questions, just ask me, and I'll just probably put it in the comments and have it answered, like answering them one by one.